Hey YouTube, Rico Knows here. So breaking news, Georgia State has decided on their new head coach. They're hiring Dell McGee, the longtime Georgia running back coach. So Dell McGee, if you don't know who he is, he started high school somewhere down in the Columbus area. I think he went to Kendrick High School. From there, he was a star running back. He ended up going to Auburn, played at Auburn for a bit, got a cup of tea in the NFL, no big deal. Fun fact, he actually finished with one tackle in his NFL career. Instead of a yard, he finished with a tackle. Shout out to special teams. But eventually, he made his way to the NFL Europe and some other places, and then he made his way back into coaching. So he started coaching. He went to the high school ranks, had a pretty successful run in the early 2000s, and then in 2005, he ended up at Carver Columbus High School in Columbus area. This is where he's from. That's the area. If you don't know, if you're looking at the state of Georgia, I want you to think the bottom left corner or west corner of Georgia. And he was a good, successful coach. Eventually parlayed that into getting on the staff as an analyst at Auburn. From there, he made his way as a running backs coach, went to Georgia Southern. And he got on Willie Fritz's staff. Now, Willie Fritz, current head coach at Houston, was a head coach for a long time at Tulane, but before that, he was the head coach at Georgia Southern, and they were running that crazy triple option, run-oriented offense. And if you remember 2015, 2016 time frame, Willie Fritz gets hired, and he leaves Georgia Southern kind of early, and he goes to Tulane. And they got to play in the GoDaddy.com Bowl or something like that. And guess who filled in as the interim head coach? Your man right there, Dell McGee. So Dell McGee was the interim head coach. They won by a huge amount, 50-something to 20-something. They win that game. Matt Breida, shout out to him, eventually became an NFL player. Shout out to the 49ers. But Matt Breida rushed for 1,600 yards that year. So Dell McGee has a great track record and acumen for getting running backs, getting the most out of them and making them professionals. That's what he's known for. So when he gets to Georgia, he's been at Georgia for 8 years. I want you to think of all the quality running backs that have been at Georgia over the last 8 years. This man has had a hand in their development, in their progression, and in their recruitment. And that's essential when you're going to a school like Georgia State. So going to Georgia State, if you didn't know, they postponed their spring football game and practices until they hired a new head coach. So they had to hire one right away. And they were down to two candidates. It was either going to be Dell McGee or Faulkner, the offensive coordinator, co-offensive coordinator at Georgia Tech. They wanted to get a Georgia guy, somebody with Georgia roots. You want a Georgia pipeline. You want to keep kids in state. There's more than enough talent in the state of Georgia. If you're ever curious, who's supplying all these great players to Alabama or South Carolina or Clemson, Florida State, whatever? It's Georgia, man. They have such amazing high school football players, and they just got to keep some at home. Georgia State, as of late, has had some great players that have went on to help other teams. Marcus Carroll's going to help Missouri next year. Jamari Thrash went and dominated when he played at Louisville this past year. And I think that Georgia State has some good players on the roster. And they tend to find players who want to come back home, get closer to home after not panning out elsewhere, right? You go and you try to make it at a different school. You don't want to play for the state school. You don't want to stay local. You told everybody you're going to play in the SEC, and then it doesn't pan out at Tennessee. It doesn't pan out at Missouri or Ole Miss. You can always come back home, or LSU even. You can always come back home and play for a great coach who knows what he's doing. So shout out to Dell McGee. I think he knows what to do as far as developing the running game and running backs. I think he's learned a lot from Kirby Smart. And on the flip side, shout out to Georgia. They're going to have to figure out a way to replace this man, who I think is irreplaceable. I think it's crazy. If you look at some of the recruits these guys signed, some of the running backs they've been getting lately, Broderick Robinson, Nate Frazier, these two running backs over the last two recruiting cycles, for me, when I watch tape, there's nobody better. Those two guys are so amazing. And I think they were committing to coaches and relationships, not just the University of Georgia. So when you start looking at the spring transfer portal cycle and certain players losing position battles at Georgia, at other schools, I believe Georgia State could be a destination for them. So let's pay attention this spring. Let's see what they can do, what they can find, what they can get as this man assesses his roster. There's going to be some turnover, but there's also going to be new life. Just like when Fran Brown got to Syracuse and a bunch of kids started saying, I'm going to Syracuse. Same thing can happen here at Georgia State. They can start getting more players. But shout out to Kirby Smart. He's going to have to find a way to stay relevant while losing quality assistants. And this offseason has been no different from others. I want to tell you, Dabo Swinney and Nick Saban made a career out of staying relevant and recovering after losing a quality assistant coach, a quality position coach. And that's exactly what happened here. You just lost a very pivotal part of your coaching staff at Georgia, and now Georgia State, they're going to be on the trajectory to climb. But what does Georgia do to stay on top of the mountain? How do they stay relevant at this position, in this position group, in this run game coordinator, assistant coach helm or label that this man had? Shout out to Dell McGee. Shout out to his family. Congratulations. You guys have now fulfilled a lifelong dream of being a head coach at the FBS level, and I hope you continue to grow and be successful. We'll be watching. We'll be cheering for you. The MVPs, if you didn't know, I do gambling picks on Patreon and YouTube, and my MVPs, we bet on Group of 5 football like crazy. We believe in Group of 5 football. We know it better than Vegas, and we watch Georgia State football. So shout out to you, Coach. Congratulations. Good luck. Your friends don't know, but Rico knows. Peace, y'all.